My name is Robert, and I lived with my wife Linda for 30 years. 30 years of shared life, joy, arguments, reconciliation, holidays, and everyday struggles. When we got married, I believed our marriage would last forever, and for the most part, it did, until one small detail turned my world upside down. We met in the late 80s in Chicago. I had just started working at a construction company downtown, and Linda was a young accountant at a small office on Michigan Avenue. Our paths crossed by chance when I was helping renovate the building where her firm was located. At first, it was just friendly conversations during coffee breaks, but soon we realized we shared similar dreams: family, stability, a small house, maybe kids. We got married in 1991, bought a modest home in Oak Park, and started building our life together. Everything seemed perfect. As the years passed, I worked my way up in construction management, while Linda became a respected accountant. We had no children, something that always weighed on Linda, but we found comfort in each other and our circle of friends. Our house became a place of warmth and laughter. But time has a way of eroding even the strongest foundations. Somewhere between late nights at the office and endless financial pressures, cracks began to form in our marriage. I noticed Linda becoming distant. She would spend hours scrolling through her phone, smiling at messages I wasn't privy to. I brushed it off at first. Maybe she was just reconnecting with old friends. But then came the late nights at work, the sudden need for privacy, the way she guarded her phone like it held state secrets. My gut screamed something was wrong, but my heart refused to believe it. One Saturday, Linda said she was meeting colleagues for dinner. I decided to follow her. My heart pounded as I trailed her car through the busy Chicago streets until she parked near a small Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park. And there he was, my younger brother, David, waiting for her. David, the brother I had trusted all my life, the man who had borrowed money from me countless times, who had eaten at our table, celebrated birthdays and Christmases with us. And now, he was the one Linda smiled at, with that warmth I hadn't seen in years. I froze, unable to move as I watched them embrace and walk inside together. The world tilted. Betrayal by a spouse was devastating enough, but betrayal by your own blood? That cut deeper than anything I could have imagined. I drove home in silence, hands gripping the wheels so hard they shook. For weeks, I carried the secret alone. Every dinner with Linda felt like torture. Every time David called me brother, it was like a knife twisting in my back. I couldn't confront them, not yet. I needed proof, something undeniable, something that would expose their betrayal without question. I hired a private investigator, a man named Collins who had worked cases like this for decades. Within days, he handed me photos, grainy but clear enough. Linda and David at a hotel in Schaumburg, holding hands at Navy Pier, kissing in a car parked outside David's apartment. The evidence was undeniable. I stared at the photographs for hours, my chest heavy, my mind swirling. How long had this been going on? Was it months? Years? How many times had David looked me in the eye while hiding this betrayal behind a smile? Finally, I confronted Linda. I laid the photos on the kitchen table one evening after dinner. Her face went pale, her fork clattering against the plate. "Robert, she began, but I cut her off. The truth was already in front of us. No words could erase it. She admitted it, said it just happened, that she felt lonely, that David understood her in ways I no longer did. Excuses, all of them. None of it mattered. The woman I had shared 30 years with had chosen my own brother to betray me with. I told her to leave. She packed a bag that night and went to stay with David. Just like that, 3 decades of marriage ended. Not with a bang, but with the quiet closing of our front door as she walked out of my life. Anger turned to numbness. I didn't just lose a wife. I lost a brother, too. David tried calling me, sending texts full of apologies and explanations. I ignored them all. He had crossed a line that could never be repaired. Blood may be thicker than water, but betrayal poisons it forever. Divorce followed swiftly. Linda fought for half of everything, and to my disgust, she had David as her support during the hearings. Sitting across from them in the courtroom, watching them hold hands was like salt in an open wound. But I kept my composure. In the end, she got her share. The house was sold, and I moved into a small apartment near Cicero Avenue. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I was truly alone. The silence was deafening, yet strangely liberating. I focused on rebuilding. I poured myself into work, picking up extra projects, saving money, and slowly piecing my life back together. Friends urged me to start dating, but I couldn't. Trust had been shattered, and I wasn't ready to let anyone close again. Then, one evening, I ran into Collins, the investigator who had helped me. He looked me over with a half smile and said, "You know, Robert, sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself." His words stuck with me longer than I expected. Months passed, and I began to notice small changes. I slept better, I ate healthier, I even joined a local gym, something I hadn't done in decades. Slowly, the man I used to be, the one before Linda and David's betrayal, started to resurface. But the past has a way of haunting you. One night, David showed up at my apartment, unannounced. He looked older, worn down. "Rob, can we talk?" he asked, his voice cracking. I wanted to slam the door, but curiosity got the better of me. We sat across from each other, silence thick in the air. Finally, he spoke. "Linda left me, said she couldn't handle the guilt. I lost her, Rob. I lost you too. I lost everything." His eyes were wet, his hands trembling. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for him, but another part, the wounded part, felt satisfaction. He had destroyed my marriage, stolen my wife, and now he was paying the price. Betrayal has a way of circling back to those who deal it. I told him to leave. "You made your choices," I said. "Now live with them." He begged for forgiveness, but I couldn't give it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The scars were too deep, and forgiveness felt like surrender. After that night, I didn't hear from David again. Months turned into a year. Rumors reached me through family. He had lost his job, moved out of state, and was struggling to stay afloat. I felt nothing but emptiness when I heard. As for Linda, she tried reaching out once. A letter, handwritten, filled with apologies and memories of better times. I read it once and tore it up. The past was gone, and no amount of ink on paper could bring it back. I realized something important. Betrayal doesn't just break you, it reshapes you. I was no longer the same Robert who had walked into marriage 30 years ago. I was harder now, more cautious, but also wiser. Life didn't end with betrayal. It began again. I found solace in simple routines. Morning coffee, walks along Lake Michigan, quiet evenings with books. Slowly, the ache in my chest became a dull memory rather than a constant wound. And so, I tell you this story not for sympathy, but as a lesson. Betrayal can come from the people you least expect, even from blood. But survival is possible. Healing is possible. And sometimes, losing everything is the first step to truly finding yourself again. Chicago itself became part of my healing. I wandered through Millennium Park, sat near the Bean, and watched tourists marvel at the skyline I had taken for granted. The city pulsed with life, reminding me that I was still part of something bigger. One Saturday morning, while jogging along Lakeshore Drive, I struck up a conversation with a man about my age. His name was Thomas, recently divorced, carrying scars of his own betrayal. We bonded over coffee, two strangers, bound by pain. Our talks became a routine. With Thomas, I realized I wasn't alone in my struggle. So many men carried hidden wounds, loss, betrayal, failure, but they still moved forward, and so could I. His friendship became a lifeline. Through Thomas, I joined a small group of men who met weekly in a cafe on North Clark Street. We shared stories, raw, unfiltered truths about life's blows. In their company, I found strength, humor, and the comfort of solidarity. Slowly, I rediscovered laughter. Real laughter, not the hollow kind I had faked for years. I started to believe in second chances. Not in marriage, not yet, but in myself. I was no longer defined by what Linda and David had done. One evening, after a meeting with the group, I walked home under the glow of the Chicago skyline. The city lights reflected on the river, and I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. A fragile peace, but peace nonetheless. David never came back into my life, and Linda remained only a shadow in old photographs. The wounds they left were real, but they no longer controlled me. I had built a new identity, forged in fire and betrayal. Sometimes, late at night, I still wondered why. Why my own brother? Why after 30 years of loyalty? But those questions no longer consumed me. I had accepted the truth. Some people choose betrayal, no matter the cost. The real choice is what you do afterward. Do you let it break you, or do you rebuild? I chose to rebuild, brick by brick, day by day, until I stood strong again, stronger than before. If you're listening to this, remember, betrayal is not the end of your story. It can be the beginning of a new one. Pain doesn't define you, your response does. And sometimes, surviving the fire makes you more unbreakable than you ever imagined. In time, I even allowed myself to imagine a future I hadn't dared before. Not with Linda, not with David, but with myself as the center. A man who didn't need validation from others to stand tall. I'd traveled a bit, short trips to Milwaukee, St. Louis, even down to Nashville. Each city carried new faces, new conversations, and new reminders that the world was wide and full of second chances. The pain never fully disappeared, but it dulled into something manageable, like an old scar that no longer ached every day. It became part of me, but not the whole of me. When people asked about Linda or David, I no longer flinched. I told the truth plainly. They made their choices, I made mine. And that was enough. No drama, no bitterness, just truth. Through it all, I learned the value of resilience. Life will test you, sometimes through the very people you trust most. But resilience is the bridge between heartbreak and healing. I am not the same Robert who once believed marriage was unshakable and brotherhood unbreakable. I am a different man, older, wiser, scarred, but stronger. And while I may never fully forgive, I have learned to release. Release the weight of their choices, release the bitterness that once consumed me, and release the man I used to be. In that release, I found freedom. freedom to laugh again, to live again, and maybe, one day, to love again. Not because I need it, but because I want it. So if you've been betrayed by a spouse, a friend, or even family, know this: you can survive. You can rebuild. You can stand taller than you ever did before. And if this story touched you, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share in the comments how you would have faced betrayal. Your story matters too. And together, we find strength in our voices.